Okay, so let me talk about The Witness. Apparently, the game is years old. It was just free not too long ago. I've had it for a minute, though, honestly. So maybe that's not correct. It was just free again, though. But I got it when it was free like a while ago, at least 2 years ago. Um, and so everyone else has already like beat it. So, and it's like old. Some of the stuff was like 6 years old, I think. So it's a game that honestly I kind of don't recommend that anybody play. I'm still not gonna really spoil it because so this is what happened. I was at my buddy's place, and for the first little while before his girlfriend came, it's like we spend the mornings and the late evenings together because he works second shift. And so I started playing The Witness. It's a game that I had started and I got stuck at one of the puzzles. It was pretty fun. I like puzzle games in general. I like, using my brain. Um, and when I was starting to be like, okay, so it's just endless puzzles, and I don't feel like I'm really getting anywhere. Um, and then I started to see like some stuff that intrigued me, and I was like, "Oh, so there's like, is there a story here? Plot twist: there may or may not be a story there, but it's a spiritual game. It's meant to be a spiritual experience." Ooh, ooh! Ace of Cups, Two of Wands, Ten of Cups, and then the Knight of Cups is behind that. Like, this is gorgeous. I'm supposed to be putting this deck down. The Hermit, no, the Tower actually came out at the cut after I. So the Hermit and the High Priestess were at the top of the deck after the Vitamin C, and the Tower came out at the cut. Just throwing that out there because I was talking about the inner child being locked in the Tower, and then the Tower came out. Three of Cups in the world. This is a world where our inner children can play together. So there are these puzzles all over the place, and there's no tutorial in the game, really. The tutorial in the game is like you use the left stick to move, press X to interact with things, and hold L2 to run. And then everything else you figure out by going from a simpler puzzle to a more difficult puzzle. And so I don't know how many hours I put into this game. I stayed up until like 4 the other night because I made it to the final area, and there's this elevator that pops up, and I'm like, ooh girl, like again, like there's this mountain in the game, so I make it to the mountain and then I go inside the mountain, and I'm like, I'm about to figure out the mystery of this island, like I'm so intrigued, and I feel a little creeped out, honestly. So minor spoiler, kinda, there are, once you get to the mountain, there may have been some other spaces, but I think it's once you get inside the mountain, you see like monitors with different areas of the island on it. So I'm like, somebody been watching me run around this island, solve puzzles. I feel creeped out. I feel like I'm being watched. There were already some other moments in the game where it felt a little creepy. I don't know. And so I get all the way to the end of the game, and this Willy Wonka glass elevator pops up, takes me back to the beginning of the game while I get to see everything that I've done on this island undo itself. And I was like, wow, I am upset. I was upset. I was mad. I was like, I can't believe I stayed up until 4 in the morning working on these final puzzles for this, only for it to literally show me that it's undoing everything that I did and taking me back to the beginning of the game. For why? And I was like, is that really the whole game? Is that really the whole game? It was the intrigue that kept me playing this game when I was done with it. And so, of course, I go to the internet and I use the internet a few times because, again, there's no tutorial in this game. And there are different types of like puzzles, and you just got to figure it out. And so there was one space the first time I broke down. It's like I thought I figured it out, but I didn't. And that was the one where you had to pair stars or asterisks of the same color together. So you had to have two, no less than two, no more than two in each enclosure. And I was like, how was I supposed to get that from this puzzle? Hello? And so I looked that one up. And after I broke the seal there, I did my best. And then if I needed to, I looked it up. Um, and I watched the creator, I think his name is Jonathan Blow. I don't know. I watched the creator of the game talk about it. And one of the, like, there are these voice recordings that are full of just like spiritual things. There are these videos that you can unlock, and one is like that science is better than art, and science is the way, science will lead us to the truth. And another one was like, science is not the complete truth. And another one is like, we should look for the truth. And then another one is like, we shouldn't look for the truth because, the truth is already within us. So why do we need to look outside of ourselves or anything? And then you hear about the different schools of Zen and how there's one that's like, I forget, but they ask questions not for the sake of being answered, but to engage the brain in some intellectual like crisis or something like that. Things that don't necessarily have an answer. And maybe at that point I should have been like, there's no point to this game. The game is telling me that there's no point to this game. The number of puzzles in that game that did absolutely nothing. And I'm like, oh, what did that do? And honestly, like it took me to go to the internet to get the secret ending. And when I saw the secret ending, I was like, okay. I was still a little bit like, what? But I was like, okay. Um, and also with the secret ending, and it reminds me of what I said about how I don't necessarily believe that there are like chosen ones. I feel like any of us have the opportunity to rise to the challenge, rise to the occasion, and to be more, right? You can come into this world in all kinds of places of privilege, or like you can come in born into wealth, born into this, born into that, and because earth is earth and life is life, you can lose it. Um, and so, like, that's why I believe like we all have the capability and capacity. Now, are there some of us that could have incarnated here who are much more likely to make something happen because of previous incarnations or because you come from somewhere else? Yes, but with Earth, you can still choose to not do any of that stuff, and some do, some don't, some do. Um, but the puzzle to reach like the secret ending is technically, it could be because there are two puzzles to escape, and then there are three puzzles. So the sixth puzzle you solve. Two to get out. Do. Or it's either the sixth or the seventh. I feel like the seventh would be like a more magical number, right? Because that was one. So that's 10. That's two. That's nine. I don't know. It's one of the first puzzles. Like when you leave the first area of the game, that puzzle that opens the gate to let you explore the island is the same puzzle that will open the gate. And I was like, what? And the video that I watched that revealed the hidden ending, because a lot of games have secret endings, the video that I watched didn't reveal the secret. They revealed the puzzle, or they revealed the configuration. They revealed the requirements that needed to be fulfilled in order to solve that puzzle. Like, I'll tell you what it did, right? I'll tell you. I'll show you if I have it. Oh, you can probably barely see it. I can barely see it. Oof, I gotta turn the brightness all the way up. Okay, you can see it. But I might have to turn the brightness down for you. Yeah, see, this is all it revealed. And then there's like, in the video, they were like, there's only one place that we've seen a puzzle of this configuration. And it's the very first, one of the very first puzzles you do in the game. And I was like, what? And so since they already reset me back to the beginning of the game anyway, I was in the area And again, in this video, he didn't solve the I don't know, they didn't solve the puzzle. They just revealed that that's the pattern that you need to abide by, and they told you where to put it in. And then when the thing when the thing happened, I was like, "What?" So I was extremely satisfied with that ending compared to the one that just undid everything that I did and sent me back to the beginning of the game. Um, but it's like they're invited, like, so there are the tape recordings that talk about all kinds of thought. The game itself can be and is meant to be like a meditative experience. Um, there are certain puzzles where you use the environment. The environment is how you solve the puzzle. They're essentially mazes, but there's a specific path that's the right path. And there are some puzzles that are open where you can take any path that you want, but the number of correct paths is limited. And like there was one area where it was like, so the puzzles on the board matched this maze. And so there was one area where it was like, if you see grass on the path, then that's like a hard boundary. So you would take the paved road, the road well traveled will get you past that one. There was, oh, that reminds me of a picture I took when we were at the Arboretum. There was another part where it was the sound. So when you would walk on the ground in certain spaces, it would make a lot of noise. And so you have to take the silent path. And the silent path was the answer. There was one where the path that you take in that part of the maze and the actual puzzle were completely different. But you had to find the commonalities and similarities between the two to know where the solution was. Um, and like there were so many parts where it's like you would use light or you would use shadow, you would use the glare from the sun, you would use pitches and tones. You would have to look through a filter to see colors in a different way to know how they connect. And there was in the elevator in that place where every floor was a different color, there were different configurations, but you would only see it when you viewed it through that lens. And so again, it's like this deeply metaphorical thing. And like when it came to the environment, I was like, oh, well, that's how I navigate my life. That's how I navigate my spiritual journey. I had a dream, I saw something, I heard something, I keep getting this, and then it helps me navigate whatever space I'm in at that moment. And it reminds me of when I say, like, sometimes the journey can be this dual dimensioned sort of thing where there's the internal that unlocks the external, and there's the external that unlocks the internal. And if you find yourself at a blockage or in a space there where you don't know to proceed in either the internal or the external, sometimes the answer or a clue will be given in the corresponding sort of area. And so it's like, oh, we like navigate both, right? To get to where we're going. And eventually the two paths become one, but they're always one because universal consciousness is outside of us and is also within us. So is there a difference? Anyway, it took me like not only like getting the secret ending to be like, what? But then I was like, well, what about that doesn't necessarily explain the intrigue. And so then I looked at that and that's when I came across like the creator of the game and how he talked about it. And he said that, like, and it was so true because it happened to me where I would play the game and play and play and play and play and like listen to stuff or just play the game. And there would be puzzles I would get stuck at. And so I would stop playing for the night. And then I would wake up the next morning and immediately have the solution. And he was like, I forget what he said. Actually, I'll find it in one of these videos. Maybe I won't. I'll try to paraphrase it. Um, he was like, sometimes we encounter these challenges in life or we encounter a problem and we give so much thought and energy and effort and focus to it that we can't find the solution. But then we take a step back and we come back and we immediately have the solution right in front of us. Hey, Mimi. Oh, she did the Gab reading a while ago. So okay, if that ain't me needing to meditate more. How are you doing today? I am doing pretty well. I updated my resume last night and I started putting it in some places. And I'm waiting on my friend to get back to me so I can make it stellar now that I'm less likely to be as triggered as I was before. Glad to hear it. And so there were times when I'm talking about The Witness. It's this game, it's a puzzle game. If you love puzzles, you'd probably like it. There are some points where you'll probably be like, how was I supposed to know this? And then depending on the video, it's like they may give you the solution, but they don't tell you how they got the solution. And you're like, well, the solution doesn't help me because I don't plan on just using the solution throughout the game. And that's what one of the videos said. It was like, just like life, if you want a solution, you can find one. But that takes you out of the presentness in the moment. But anyway, he said that to emphasize how sometimes you do love puzzles. Oh yeah, I remember you told me that. You might like it. The Witness was free on the PlayStation for a minute. It might also be on the Xbox. I think I saw people play on PC. If it ain't free, it should be relatively inexpensive, I would assume. Um, but he was like, because sometimes it's not about seeking the answer, it's about receiving. And how we sort of by default, there are things that we already know. We may not be able to explain it. We may not know why we know those things, but we know it. And so and he was like, I don't know how to encode in a game that experience within one's mind. But like I said, it happened. Like I would be stuck on a puzzle. I go to bed. I come back immediately, have the solution. I'm like, oh, what? And I was like, I feel like I tried this yesterday. And it'd be like, I don't know if the solution is easy or if it's because like you get it so quickly after that break that you think it was easier. And that's when I was like, when he said that and I experienced that, I was like, oh, okay. So like there is a point to this, even though there isn't a point to this. Um, and there was also one space where like, I got stuck on a puzzle and my friend and his girlfriend were there. My friends were there. And I was like, so this is how the game works. Like if you see these black dots, you have to solve the puzzle where you connect through all the black dots. And also if you see the Tetris block, you have to make that shape. And I couldn't figure it out. And it took them a while to figure it out, but then he eventually figured it out. They kind of figured it out. Like he would do something and then she would say something or try something and he'd be like, oh, let me try this. And then, they go back and forth. But for me, like that was a space that like in that moment, I didn't fully recognize it, but it's one that I'm coming into now, I guess, where it's a shared collective, not a shared, I guess a shared conscious collective. It was a collaborative effort, okay? And I'm coming into the space of, I guess, in some way, spiritually collaborating with more people after I had a period of reservation. So, after coming from the Thoth reading, is it Thoth or Tot? Because I know it's Seth is like Seth, but I've heard it pronounced Set. So now I'm like, is it Thought? Is it Toth? Is it Tot? I don't know. Anyway, yeah. So maybe you should check out The Witness. I feel like I like the only reason why I do recommend it. Um, with the straight up ending, I wasn't satisfied. I was very unsatisfied. I was a little upset. I was angry. I was irate. But I guess, like, honestly, though, I should have known that there was more to the game. I should have known. I should have known. I should have knew it. And also, there was a secret puzzle in plain sight in the beginning of the game, too. But see, like, that puzzle and the secret, and there were some people, that's why I talked about that, because the secret ending is one of the very first puzzles. There are people who actually solved it right the first time. That's why I went into the part about how I don't necessarily believe that there are chosen ones, that we are all chosen, or that we all have the capability and capacity to become something greater. Because there are people who won't make it through hours and hours of this game to find out how to solve every type of puzzle, to know what this even means if they even reach that secret part of the game. Because, like, this is something that you have to discover, and then you have to remember, oh, wait, like, that's the first puzzle that I saw. And then there were people in the comments that were like, oh, well, like, I did this in the first 5 minutes of the game. It's like it can just happen. We can just navigate in a way, but maybe it goes back to that internal knowing. And instead of trying to solve, we just allow the solution to bubble forth from the inside. Yeah, but like for this one though, it isn't even a matter of like putting clues together because for that puzzle, there's no there's no real like wrong solution and you won't even know the clues for that puzzle until you like reach that secret space because you won't know how it's encoded because there's nothing that reveals to you until you get basically to the end of the game what the rules are. But you can just like if you're prone to like artistry and making funny shapes, not funny shapes, but if you're prone to a more roundabout approach rather than a like if you take a direct approach to solve that puzzle, you're not going to get it. But if you take that roundabout approach, it's like boom. And I take roundabout approaches sometimes because I like things to just like look pretty when they light up, right? But yeah, some people do have the keen sense for putting clues together quick. Some people like really do. It's like, oh yeah, that was hard. What? But honestly, after playing that game, and like again, sometimes it was people in the comments more than the person solving the puzzle because he was like, yeah, like I tried for 5 minutes, just kept doing different iterations of solving this, and then I eventually got it. I had to brute force my way through this. But somebody in the comments would be like, oh, and there were also puzzles where it's like you would have to it would be like on a piece of glass. And so if you look at it from the front, you wouldn't be able to tell what the solution is. But if you look at it from the back, that's when you can solve it. And I was like, what? I would have never thought to go to the back side of this panel and to just like, and it's also about perspective. In a lot of spaces, it's about perspective because there are some puzzles that so heavily rely on the environment. And so, like, you have to be positioned correctly. You have to know the right perspective, and that's what he also talked about. That he was like, some people would say that they have to brute force their way to solve these puzzles. Like, you have to approach every single angle to try to see like where the solution lies. Or he was like, or if you learn as you go, then like you would already know the angle that you need to see what it is that you want to see. So you would go immediately to that position. Then it's not brute forcing. Then it's you learning and you're being rewarded for that learning. And I was like, what? Now there was some of them I was able to look, okay, like if this is how this is, then I need to find this certain like I'm gonna have to look from this way. Like where's the sun? Okay, like we're gonna need like this top down perspective or like from the left or like from the right. There were some times too when I just like I'm like going all over the map trying to like get this certain angle. Like, where can I see it? I think I saw trailers for that movie. It looked a little horror y. It looked a little scary, if that's the right movie. Um, and so it's like sometimes it is a matter of perspective. Sometimes the environment gives us clues. And like once I found out about the environment, I was like, oh, so like I started paying more attention to the environment when I encountered a puzzle that I didn't know how to solve. I started like I experienced the one puzzle that you had to solve looking at the back, and then I encountered another puzzle at the end of the game where I'm like, I see the solution, but because these bars are here, I can't make it past there. And then I'm watching a video of somebody else play, and he goes to the back side of the puzzle. I'm like, oh my gosh, I forgot you could do that. Right. It's not that scary. There are some jumps though. Okay. I watched Batman Dark Knight, I think, with my mom in the theater, and there was a jump at one point. Well, my whole family was there, but my mom screamed and it was funny. And Giovanni was behind me. I was like, "What? I ain't seen Giovanni in a minute." Actually, what's Giovanni up to? I don't know. Anyway, and so in that, I was like, "Oh." And again, like it was today because I just finished watching one of the videos where one of the dudes talked about it and how it is like a really sort of philosophical and meditative game, and how it teaches us in some way we can observe like maybe how we navigate the real world, how we navigate life, and whether or not we're sort of open to those experiences where we have the patience to sort of figure something out, and like if we immediately jump to solutions, or do we jump to like how do I solve this so I can get my own solution, and then the more you do, and then you're putting all these pieces together, and then you get the secret ending, and I was like, oh, what? But like, if I was playing the game for 5 minutes and immediately got that, like, I would have been like, that's it. Like, I don't know. I guess I don't want to say the struggle gives it context, but because in the first area, there's no like the intrigue isn't there yet. And I say the intrigue isn't there yet because there are these features that pop up all over the place. And I was like, what is this about? Like I wanted to like how did this happen? Um but I guess in some ways, and then in that video at the end of the video it talked about the Diamond Sutra, which is one of like two Zen texts, I think. And it was basically like how it was like something that becomes calcified. It's like when you try to do whatever too much, it becomes calcified. It's like people who sort of more or less get stuck in the matrix rather than just like receiving the exit. Because it isn't anything that we have to figure out. It's like our own intuitive knowing that is, because we're connected to the all that knows all. So in self, we find everything that we need because it's connected there anyway. I was just like, "What?" I didn't even know it was like I didn't know I was having a spiritual experience. And I don't think I've talked about maybe I've talked about the witness once or twice. But there's a lot of things that like I'll play a game, I'll watch a movie, I'll hear a song, somebody will say something, I'll go somewhere. And then it's like, "Oh, like I just saw this in this movie. I just saw this in anime that I'm watching or in the video games that I'm playing." But with the witness, I feel like again for me, especially now that like I know that it's like this. And then like he was like, that's why it's called the witness, right? Because in certain mindfulness awareness practices, and in I know in my meditation class, it's like you go back to the universal witness, the one who isn't so engrossed in the game that they can't just like observe things, like observe our emotions and how they feel, observe the emotional, intellectual, and physical setting of certain things, and it's like becoming the beholder who can see beauty in anything and everything. Is like the universal witness. The game is the witness. I was like, oh snap! What? That's crazy. And I was like, it was like what midnight, 11. I was like, let me go finish. And like, I had to look up the solution to one of the last two puzzles because I was like, I'm not getting it. And then I beat the game. And again, it's like, it undid everything that I did. And I was like, so like, you're not going to tell me what all, like, I've literally been playing the game to find out what this is. Like, that's the only reason why I kept playing this game at times. I was like, I don't really want to play it today, but maybe I'll discover something that'll let me know what the freak is going on this island. and then you get to the end and it just resets you. And I was like, just I'm sad. They do. But I feel like that's also like it's like we don't need there are a lot of esoteric and mystical and even occult things, not and even occult. There are a lot of esoteric, mystical, and occult things that can give us a lot of context and it can help guide us throughout life, but none of it is necessary, none of it is needed because the divine exists all around us and within us. We can experience what we need to experience to navigate what it is that we're navigating, to make whatever choices or decisions that we're making, or whenever we need guidance. Like it's always around us. And so, because it's always around us, there are some things that just like, is it the thing or is it just the nature of the y'all? I don't know. But yes, they do be having connections because the creators of these games they be putting all kinds of stuff in it. Like, oh, I'm gonna help them. So yeah, that was this game. I was like, wait, and I think that was all I wanted to talk about. I don't think there was. I think I touched on most things. Um, so yeah, perspective and the environment sometimes where perspective, the environment, and your own intuitive knowing, especially after you've dedicated hours to something. And then there's like a gauntlet at the end of the game. There's a challenge where the puzzles are randomly generated and you have a certain amount of time to. Now, I didn't even discover the challenge. I need to go activate another laser before I can do that. But it's like you have a certain amount of time. There was a mini challenge where it's like you have a certain amount of time to solve a puzzle and then it'll restart. And so it's like it's training that intuitive knowing. It's like it's trying to force that intuitive knowing out. Like you take a glance, you know the rules because by this point in the game you've experienced all of these puzzles. And so your brain, your connection, it just puts the solution in front of you and you just naturally follow it and you boom 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 boom. You get the answer. Now, there was a certain part of the challenge that I think they hid. Or like there are these little voice recorders. I didn't even know that they made noise because I guess I wasn't paying attention or I wasn't playing with the volume on. And so there were some of them I hit them and then I don't even know what they said. I was like, what do these do? Play with the sound on. Maybe you'll find out. So you keep seeking confirmation without, but you already know or get the messages and wisdom. Yeah. I mean, I think it's something that we all do for sure, especially at this point. I feel like, and I talked about it yesterday that we pretty much all know what it is that we need to know at this point. It's regardless of whether or not we can follow through with it, if we give it any credence, any belief, any whatever, or if, we just go about our daily lives. So that's the witness. It was, if I didn't play the game, I wouldn't have had as much of an appreciation for the experience, even though I was extremely disappointed and let down the first time. But I didn't know. I didn't like I was doing all of these things and I didn't even know it. And I only unlocked 2 videos. And then once I started listening to the recordings, I was like, there's something more to this game. Like it's deeply, I don't want to say philosophical, but it's meant to be a Zen-like experience. And in that regard, I guess the creator did an excellent job. And like there were a lot of comments that was like 5 minutes of the creator of the game not explaining the game or like not giving the story behind the game. And they called him like pretentious and stuff. But honestly, from a certain like level of appreciation and observation of how I navigate my own life and how I navigate my journey and how we as in general navigate our journeys, I don't think it was that pretentious. I honestly think it was quite profound. It's a profundity that was lost on me until, I got all this other information, of course. But I guess it kind of sort of reminds me of the high priestess in a way that sometimes we can speak plain English or plain insert language here to people who understand insert language here, but the meaning is lost. And just because the meaning is lost, and just because we try to communicate these difficult concepts in ways that may seem extremely, what's a word for something being, I forget what the word is. I looked it up recently. It's being made to sound more complicated than it actually is. And so it gives an air of pretentiousness and like being full of oneself, but it is quite profound. Um, and yeah, I'm glad that I went to YouTube and looked some stuff up because I was like, that's it. You're just gonna undo everything I did, put me back to the beginning of the game. And maybe that's a metaphor for life in and of itself, right? We navigate through life, we do all these things, and if you believe in reincarnation, you're reincarnated and you forget everything. But there are some things that your soul remembers how to navigate. So now when you encounter certain puzzles, you already know the solutions. Either you remember the solutions or you remember how to navigate the puzzle. Now, oh, I wasn't going to pull any of these, but there are a few cards in this deck that make me think of that first puzzle. One of them is the Divine Codex. Another one is an ancient word that stirs ancient things to life, whispered. Maybe the bell that brings the intangible and physical into harmony as it pulses out into the universe. Because again, it's like you can get the secret solution on your first try without knowing that that's the solution, or you can make it through the game. Make it through the game, make it through the challenge and all these little secret hidden areas, make it through more puzzles, and then find the key to the first puzzle that'll give you the true ending. Yeah. And then also with like a lot of stuff in school, it's like you have to solve it in the way that they teach you. And it's like, okay, well, or I could not and get the same solution. Hello. But the thing I like about math is that it builds upon itself and it expands. And it's kind of universal. Okay, I guess I'll get one more. This is not giving me what I wanted. Who are you? This card didn't want to go back in. I don't know if I want to take it though. I'll ask Siri because I love doing that. If Siri says heads, I'll flip it over. If Siri says tails, I'll put it back. Hey Siri, flip a coin. Psych. Hey Siri, flip a coin, please.
Tails.
Oh, we're putting it back. Oh, bottom of the deck, a blip of light at the heart of a black hole. I'm curious what that card is, but I didn't look at it. I want one more. Okay, I'll talk about these first. So the first two cards that came out, it's a swaying tower that is moments from toppling, clouded vision and burning lands, a powder keg. A well-crafted illusion, a contaminant blowing in the breeze searching for an open eye. That contaminant blowing in the breeze searching for an open eye is interesting because it's something looking for somebody looking. But with the energy of this well-crafted illusion, it's like it's going to present to you what you're looking for. But what you're looking for isn't necessarily the truth. but it will validate what you're looking for. So you will think that it is the truth. It's looking for seekers and it's looking to misguide them. This swaying tower that is moments from toppling, clouded vision and burning lands of powder keg. This is honestly, it's an energy. It's so interesting how we have so many predictions around the end of the world, or the ending of the world, and we have so many theories, I guess, and we put so much energy and effort, and it's kind of sort of both of these energies together, honestly. We put so much energy and effort going after the low hanging fruit that we don't see the ways that we willingly buy into the ending of everything. We don't see the ways in which we voluntarily bring about our own end because we focused more on the more immediate or apparent or obvious threat. It's all a distraction, right? For all of the enemies that so many great civilizations on this planet had, it was themselves that caused their destruction. It wasn't anything outside. They invited destruction upon themselves by focusing on or choosing to ignore whatever it is, right? Some of these I don't like. And it's the seven of diamonds. It's the nine of spades and the seven of diamonds. Nine of swords and seven of pentacles. Like, that is what we're cultivating. That is the foundation for everything that we build. It's this nine of swords energy of not wanting to see or fearing certain things. And we just further build upon that. We go further into our limitation rather than expanding further into our abundance. But yeah, what is this? 15. That's why, because it has double energy in it. It got some double energy in it. Capricorn, the third eye, the root, air, and what planet is this? Or no, that's a sign. It might be Scorpio. It's Sagittarius. I was gonna say it might be Sagittarius. Yeah. Sagittarius, the devil, Capricorn, the third eye, the root, and the element of air. And that perfectly, especially in the shadow side of Sagittarius, the contaminant blowing in the breeze, searching for an open eye. And this well-crafted illusion, it's not a well-crafted illusion. It's a very poorly constructed illusion, but it plays on what it is that we already believe or what it is that we want to believe as true. And it's our attachment to needing something to be true that keeps us from seeing all the ways in which it isn't. And that's the clouded vision while the lands are burning. Sun still shining, flowers still blooming. That's why, like, when everything started locking down last year, like, before I was, like, in other spaces, I was like, ooh, them kids loud. But the sun would be shining outside. I would hear children playing and the birds chirping. I'm like, oh, things look different, but in my life, things are pretty good. Yep, I'm alive. I think the dog is trying to go out, but I'm almost done. So that's what that is. That's how we can sort of. All right, I'm gonna put the dog on the leash real quick. RB. All right. So it validates what it is that we're already seeking to the point where we don't see the truth of what's actually causing or bringing ruin. We think it's not what we're doing. We think it's what everyone else is doing. Anyway, back to this. So I feel like I keep trying to like remember the dream I had last night, but it's not happening. Thank you. Okay. Where do we go from here? The energy that we send out is the energy that we receive. The future is born in the heart. We have more Capricorn here. Oh, there's a 444 on this card. Fire, the heart chakra, the magician. It might be Mars. Also, Jupiter moves into Pisces today, so that's exciting. Mercury. It's Mercury. No, it's Venus. It's Venus. So Venus, the heart chakra, fire, the magician, and Capricorn. The energy that we send out is the energy that we receive. The future is born in the heart. An internal truth burning to be seen, the yin side of masculinity, a thrusty yet elegant dance, 6 of spades. And that's a whole bunch of cards. I ain't doing all that. On the cusp of realization, a shared vision, and a quickening. 3 of wands. Oh, the shared vision. Right? It's almost like if there was a phenomena that was heading to Earth, the more people who could see it, the closer it is. But for some reason, like let's say that we only have a network that's capable of establishing like 30 people. And so we distribute these 30 people or these 30 stations around Earth. When one person sees it, when 2 people see it, when 10 people see it, when like 15 people see it, like we know it's getting closer because it appears bigger in the sky. Or would that be the opposite? No, because as something is, yeah, it's like those pictures of like if Saturn was in the sky where the moon is, like it would be huge. The fact that it's being perceived by more and more and more, especially when it comes to a strong will and an open heart, all things taken into account, Ace of Clubs. Just had the random memory, no one would probably believe me, but back in the AOL days, you started CTFU and people would ask what it meant. There was a certain period of time I was just putting everything in like little acronyms and initialisms. And what was the wildest part though? The wildest part is like when you would put up a random thing and somebody would figure it out. And I was like, oh, so this is evidence to me that like eventually we'll move to telepathy. Right. I can already move from a complete sentence to a few letters and you know what I'm talking about. We're getting closer. We understand each other on a deeper level if we can use less language to communicate. And a lot of people view it as regressive, but in my weird world, it's progressive. We don't need as much to communicate as effectively. That should be a good thing. Maybe not. I don't want to say should be a good thing. It could be a good thing. So, in the space of consciousness, when more people give energy towards something, it becomes more powerful. It reminds me of Freddy versus Jason, where Freddy, it's like people were forgetting about Freddy And so Freddie wasn't able to do whatever it is that he was doing. So what he did was he freed Jason to send Jason to Elm Street. I don't know where it is. And people thought Freddie, for the people who remembered Freddie, thought Freddie was the one that was going after people, but it was actually Jason. But because, and then again, this is that well crafted illusion, the contaminant searching for an open eye. Because Freddie knew that people would assume that it was him. And so now that people remember Freddie, now people are giving power back to Freddie. Now Freddie can enter this space that he's been exiled from through the power of their fear or belief in him. But then we had to deal with both Freddie and Jason. So, because, Jason was real and not just in people's dreams. You're totally waiting for telepathy to replace email. Hey, Eve. Yeah, that's that energy. And that's why this can be a good thing. Oh, 333. That's why this can be a good thing, or it could not work to our advantage. It works to our advantage when it's something that we want, when it's something that will benefit us. It works to our disadvantage when it's something that we sort of like fear. And the body, um, yeah. And in it, he would like prey on their fear. So he would like represent their fear to get that. And um at the resolution of the movies, it was their lack of fear. It's like they had to make him feel fear in order to like take care of him. And I guess one of his biggest fears was not being feared. So, but it also said they said something in the movie, the Chakapiwa. It was like all living things. It's like they take on the attributes of the form that they inhabit, or something like that. And so, if it looks like a butterfly, then it's going to have to behave as a butterfly. If it looks like a fire hydrant, then it has to behave as a fire hydrant. And so, whatever it is that we choose to, whatever vessel, I guess, that it is that we choose to occupy, those are the bounds in which we have to abide by in this reality, even if we have the ability to transcend it. Yeah. And I feel like at this point, there are a few other ones that are pretty big, like a perceived, like people need to feel safe. And I guess it goes more on fear, but just like when it comes to like competition, right? And it's like, well, if we make things easier for everybody, then that'll make things more difficult for those who already have something or something, right? And it's like not necessarily, but I guess that again it plays on a different fear. Fear can sort of expand into any realm like that. Yeah, I lived a life full of fear for a long time, so I know. As we all do, probably. So yeah, honestly though, this feels it feels good. It's making me think of like that divine mother energy. It's like the more we can receive these different aspects of the divine that have these higher capabilities, gifts, functionalities, the easier it is for them to sort of impress upon us. Just like fear can impress some not so great stuff, love can impress some pretty amazing stuff, right? And the closer it gets, the more people believe, the stronger it is, the more energy it receives. Yeah. This is Freddy versus Jason all day long. But then it's like, I don't know, did Freddy think he could tell Jason to just go home and then Jason would leave and Freddy could be whatever? Like, I don't know. On the cusp of realization, though. So realization to me implies that it is something of truth rather than something of illusion, like this contaminant blowing in the wind, looking for people who already believe. And that also reminds me of the show and the magicians. The show is the magicians, where it preyed on belief. It preyed on belief to summon itself into this world through promises that it didn't keep. And for the one who was left surviving, her memory, she had a false memory of what actually transpired. Her false memory was like, oh yeah, like we summoned the god and he did all of these wonderful things. Like he healed this person and he restored that to this person, and then we went on and lived our lives, and that's why we haven't seen him, or that's why I haven't seen him. But then the truth came and they all died horrendously. And yeah, it wasn't great. But we're beyond that energy now. That came out first. So Queen of Spades, Queen of Swords, love her. Operating as a unified whole, living the example, the heart, a heart that shines from the depths of the soul. Because we already had the future is born in the heart in this Ace of Cups. The future is born in the heart. The energy that we send out is the energy that we receive. Well, here's the unified whole and the heart that shines from the depths of the soul. The future is born in the soul because that's where the heart shines from. And it reminds me, I love that it comes out after this realization. After the realization, after the shared vision, after the quickening, operating as a unified whole. Living the example, like actually being that, operating and living as a unified whole. And then getting closer to who we are on a deeper soul level. And that's where I'm going to end this because that feels right. Bottom of the deck is the Eight of Spades, rearrangement and coagulation, seeing the truth of the self, and distorted creations abound. When you can see the truth of the self, then I guess it makes it easier to see all the non-truths of the self. And that's when we realize here, prophetic dreams inspired action, tapping into the other side. That's where we realize here all of this, like these well crafted illusions are not very well crafted at all. It just plays on fear or what it is that we already want to believe, or that what it is that we already believe. Again, that's some shadow side Sagittarius energy, but the collective South Node is in Sagittarius right now. So makes sense. So that's what I got. The witness was amazing. And I did not know that I was having such a profound experience when I was playing that game, but I was, I guess. Yeah, happy Jupiter in Pisces. It moves in today. I think what's this? I think Chino's ready to come in now. Okay. I'm hungry. In 3 hours and 49 minutes, according at 4:32 p.m. Central Time. According to this, Jupiter will officially be in Pisces. Can I pull for Jupiter in Pisces? I really want to pull the year two Angelarium cards just to see if it gives anything different. But I guess where it ended when I was there, it was different. I kind of want to just listen and wait for a second. It feels like silence. Like I hear my dog barking and I hear birds. But do you know, like, when you're in a silent room, the pressure that's in your ear from the silence, like, that's what I feel. That's what I hear. I don't think it's necessarily bad. It's to stop and receive. Because it's like I can still hear everything going on around me, but there's a silence behind it. And focusing on the silence beyond the noise. Maybe I need to meditate more too. Because that's what it feels like. It feels like stop and receive, or stop to receive. And again, with that contaminant searching for an open eye, it's like allow yourself to receive truth rather than being distracted by the environment. Two of hearts, being between worlds, a vision brought to life, choices that require foresight and communication. 37, 6, 11, 2, 6, and 3. See, this is, I think that's the being between worlds. That's the being between worlds energy. Because it's like we can hear this world, but we can also hear the other. It's like one ear, one eye, one arm, one leg, one heart, and both sides. Maybe that's why that second heart is missing, because it's on the other side. Yeah, that's the higher heart. Bottom of the deck is a school of glimmering fish spotlight a sunken treasure and the rising of a new continent. That school of glimmering fish that spotlight a sunken treasure again. So what the fish do? Okay, Mimi. The fish, because water naturally distorts and reflects and refracts light. And so it's like the school of fish plays off of that reflection and refraction. It's like mirrors and a laser trying to spotlight what it is that is down there. Um, it could be. I'm not sure. I think this spot is open to interpretation. Whatever you hear in that other space, and it's not that we can't share what we hear, right? Because we can. There's a little bit of a Charon energy. It's like if we can listen to both worlds, if we can have our lower heart connected to our higher heart that is connected to the divine heart, then it's almost like we get to serve as a bridge. We get to be the ferryman that eases the transit for energies from one space to the other. Now, typically, things go from the world of the living back to the world of spirit, But again, with that dolmen, there are some things that are being returned to the world of living from the world of spirit, but it may not be taking the traditional route of birth. I don't know what that means. I don't know if it means anything. Or it isn't something like a person to be born. Because people are born. Other things are born in different ways. Like we give birth to our ideas and creations and things like that. But yeah. And I remember at some point last year, there was a feeling of a great blank space, like white space, that as we come into our spaces of mastery, we're invited to. And then it took on an energy that was almost like Xavier's School of the Gifted, like X-Men and stuff like that. Because there will be those who come later. But there's something about anchoring space and paving the way. But not because even in that space, like it still looked and looks pretty blank. It reminds me of Inception. Welcome back. When they went to go find Ariadne, who was the architect. Maybe that's why it's silent. It's not coded yet. Or we all code our own space, either way. But there are some communal spaces, right? Even if you have your own room, there are some common areas. We're still creating it. That makes sense. I don't even know where that video was. Cause I was like, let me just cause I was doing a lot of listening last year. It was about ish this time last year where I would just go on the porch and listen. Listen for what's missing, what isn't there, or just listen to see what is there. I've only watched it once, so I don't remember. Honestly, it takes me back to the energy of that Sage of Swords. And I talked about it yesterday. I had like 3 videos yesterday though, so I don't remember which one. I think that's why my days are off because I'm doing like multiple videos in a day. And so I'm like a day ahead. Um, but it's like there are certain spaces that are awaiting a more divine creation. And it makes sense. Earth is something we experience here. Time Master was the so yesterday the Time Master popped into my mind, and then I was like, wait, did I have a dream about the Time Master? I was like, I can't remember. But it's not the Time Master. This one would be the Space Master. If there's a Master of Time, then there should also be a Master of Spaces. The Time Master would kind of sort of set the scale for the evolution of that space, but the space master encodes what is possible, right? The time master, I guess I gotta go get Chino now. He'll be all right out there. I'm almost done. The space master gives you the seed. So the space master will give you a tomato seed or a grape seed or whatever kind of seed. The time master controls the blooming of that seed, but the space master is the one who dictates what it will be or what it has the potential to become. The space master encodes the potentiality of that space. The time master creates the linear space for us to experience it in time. And that sort of decides, okay, like this is stage one, and then stage two, and then stage three, and so on. Because something about this space, there is an element that, like, in time, it will become what it is to become, but the space itself feels undefined. And potential is dark, usually. Like things are born of the womb, born of the void. But this potential is bright. This potential is light. It's a light potential instead of a dark potential. Yeah, that was a while ago. Because I was like, Mother Nature, Mother Nature. We're hearing so much about Mother Nature. Well, where's Father Time? Yeah, maybe that's just the type of person I am. It's like if this is coming to our awareness, well, where's that counterpart energy? What is that counterpart energy doing? Because when we get to certain quantum levels, if one energy is moving, then the other energy is moving. Or if there's like, because the time master, yeah, with their patience issues. I don't know if that's the time master or something else. It may be he may be the one. Go to Russ. Um, the only reason why I started asking about the time master is because he was super prevalent in a lot of what like Russ was doing at whatever time, and then he just disappeared. And it took a while for me to notice that that he had disappeared, and I was like, "The Time Master hasn't come out in a while. Like, what's he up to?" And that's why, like, every time I'm like, "Hey, Russ, like, where's the Time Master?" And of course, Russ is like, the Time Master will appear when the Time Master appears, right? Asking about him isn't gonna make him show up. But I'm like, well, can we go ask? Can we look? Can we dig into it? Honestly, again, it takes me back to the energy of that divine codex. Because the divine codex would be the book, would be the language that contains how space is written. Time is more experienced than written, I feel. Now we can dilate time or we can contract time, where like it can feel like it's slowing down or speeding up. It can determine and dictate phases. Time sets seasons, time sets cycles. Cycles and seasons are often marked by time. Yeah. I was out and then I saw the email that you sent me and I was like, "Oh, snap, what?" And I was like, I didn't have my volume on, but I saw him slowly descend into the video. I was like, "Oh, I can't wait to hear what he says." Um, but yeah, something in that codex. It's a series of rules, laws that haven't been used in a while. The time wasn't right because humanity was doing what humanity was doing, and it's like we can't put humanity in this space, and if they're still being weird, it's like, are they still being weird? It's like, yeah, they're still down there being weird. Okay, well, Time Master, add a few more centuries onto the clock. Maybe they'll get it. But maybe with the energy of the quickening, with the energy of the shortcut, with the energy of allowing the world to be rewritten, instead of being added time, time is being taken away. So now something is coming even quicker because the fulfillment of the thing, it's not dependent on time. It's dependent on condition. And we are fulfilling the conditions. But the space isn't created yet, or it's still being created. Because it's like, so light and dark, they both have womb potential. But typically we give the womb to the dark and the birth to the light. We're born into light from the darkness. But the light also has the potential to be a womb, for which the dark would be the space in which it does whatever. I don't know. It feels like, okay, my dad is going to get him. It feels like we know a lot of what it is that we don't want to experience or what we no longer want to experience. And that's the potential born from the womb of dark. But the light side is still empty. The light side is still awaiting instruction. A lot of what we're putting out, it's coming from that dark space. And that's why the light space is there. It is like both. But I feel like rewriting has more of a dark energy. And like pre-writing or writing is the light space. A lot of what we want to experience or a lot of what we believe is based on things that we already know. Like, because I have experienced what I have experienced, this is what I want to experience. More of this, less of that. And it feels like that all comes from the dark space. But on the light side, it feels more like it's the area of the high priestess. Because when it's born into when the womb is the light and it's born into dark, that's like a future to present energy. It's a future to present energy instead of a past to present to future. It's like a future to present to past. And so then it's like, well, how can we reach for things that we have no ability to conceive of right now? The answer is the channel. It's the connection to the divine. It's that lower heart, higher heart, universal heart. It's that tapping into the self, the seat of the self, because the divine is timeless. And so it can bring us things that we have no previous recollection of, or knowledge of, or experience with. It's the space of an unsullied, I don't want to say unsullied future, but it's like how I said my word for 2021 is unimaginable, because where I end this year, there's no way I would have ever even guessed that that's where things would have gone at the beginning. It's pulling from these spaces that are written because we will eventually get there, but they're so disconnected from everything that we've experienced that there's no way for us to logically perceive of them. That's why the light womb is always, I don't want to say it's empty, but that's why it's so difficult to tap into the light womb. So it's so difficult to tap into something that we have absolutely no tie to. But again, the space of universal knowing within would. And so maybe that's why it's coming out from the light. And then it's like it's the realm of all of the things that the divine wants to bless you with that you don't even know that you want yet. And it's like whenever you experience, like when you meet somebody and they tell you about something and you're like, "Oh, I don't know, I've never heard about that," and then you love it, like, you were always like, you've always loved it, you were always going to love it. It just took someone from outside of your experience to bring it to you in a way that currently at that moment, maybe you had never heard of it. It could be something from a different land, from a different culture, from a different time, and that's tapping into, it feels like a very high light side of Sagittarius. It feels like that global sort of interconnected, bridging gaps in these spaces where there is maybe very little to no sort of common ground. But we've been so rooted and established in needing a common ground, and we're so heavily reliant upon continuity, the continued evolution of something, that we don't really allow ourselves to make those quantum leaps into things that are ready for us. But it's our tie to continuity that makes us dilate time, because now instead of just receiving it, it's something that we have to grow into, and it stretches it out. I don't know. It's something like that. But that's why it feels like that stop and listen, because the light space can communicate with us. And then it's like, it's, instead of the hermit taking its lantern into the dark, it's us just walking into the light. And you can have a lantern to walk into the light, but it wouldn't do much, because there's already light there. But to enter those spaces, we have to have our shadows in check, because the closer we get to the source of that light, even though we wouldn't be able to tell where the source is because it's so bright everywhere, our shadow would get bigger and bigger and bigger the closer we get. And so if you're experiencing, potentially, this is extremely potential, but it's like if you're experiencing an elongation of your shadow, you may be coming into a space that is more light, or in the vicinity of something that is more light. But because it is more light, it requires more control of that shadow to keep it in proportion, so that it's not getting longer. It stays where it is, it doesn't distort itself. And that's our own balance between our light and dark sort of polarity. But then again, that goes to that energy. It's like there are some spaces that are only of light and some spaces that are only of dark. And for us to be there, either our own shadow has to enshroud our light, or our light has to envelop our shadow, in order for us to exist as a whole in those spaces, and not be like immediately rejected and shot out. It's like turning something inside out. Right? It's like we walk around, us as humans, we walk around with an endoskeleton. Our skeleton is inside of our bodies, and so the outside of our bodies protects it. But bugs, they have exoskeletons, so their skeletons are outside of their bodies. And so it's like, if it's kind of gross to imagine, but if like, if we can flip ourselves inside out to have an exoskeleton in spaces where the environmental conditions are different. And so it's important for us to be more sturdy outside and protect our gooey insides. So, yeah. I mean, and honestly, I feel like, I don't know, but I feel like the energy of a lot of managing the shadow is just it's an acceptance of ourselves in our entirety, to the point where we aren't so, well, it's partially an acceptance of ourselves in our entirety, to the point where we're not distorted by darkness around us that like feeds into our shadow and makes it even bigger. But we also sort of like don't downplay it either, because then it's like it can span in dimensions that we just limit our awareness. um and also, what was the other part? Part of it was knowing ourselves, another part of it was um being less triggered, I guess. In a way, not really. Being more healed. I don't know. And honestly, I don't know if it's these energies coming out. But like when I did the challenges and the rewards and those archangels and the strongholds, a lot of that stuff, a lot of those challenges seem like they would be for more of someone who's like trying to attain a certain level of mastery that may lead to a certain level of ascent. And again, like anybody can do it, but not everyone will have the interest in it or the follow through, the determination. And like I said a few weeks ago, I believe at this point, my focus is shifting to like what lies for us beyond a lot of the healing, right? My focus when I first started up until then, and it was sort of shifting in that space, was like, what am I not seeing that I need to heal? What are some things that are preventing me from these spaces that I want to be in that I'm not seeing or that I don't think of as big of an issue as they are? What are some of my biggest limitations? And so for for a while, whenever I read, even if it was like a question about whatever, it was like, well, this is a limitation that's sort of preventing us from getting where it is that we want to go. And this is something that's going to have to be dealt with, because with this not being dealt with, it's keeping us running the same cycles because we don't allow ourselves the permission to be free of it. Now, my intention is shifting beyond all of that. Assuming that you have already done all of your healing, assuming that you are in a space of doing your healing at the very least, that if something comes to your awareness, that you handle it and address it rather than running from it or coping around it or dismissing it. It's as those sort of barriers and blockages start to fall, and as the winds of change blow us into these new lands. It's like if you take a dandelion and you blow it all the way across the Atlantic, that's the strength of the winds right now. Now these plants can begin to root them, the seeds can root themselves in spaces that old winds and waters would have never carried them. But that's the magnitude of the winds that are blowing right now. This is what lies sort of in that space and beyond, which is why I don't know what it is. But that's always, I guess, where my interest is. It's in the things that I don't know. Like, what am I growing into next? Right? It's a continuation of growth, but a lot of that shadow management and healing and like distortions between our light and our dark, that's more of like what already was, but it's probably what sort of is, right? Because somebody has to start establishing the next space in order for it to be open to us. If everyone focuses on what we're already doing, then, I don't know. I don't know. But I guess it's just a general reminder for myself included that that's where my intention has been shifting or has shifted. And so there's going to be a lot of stuff that, like, I don't know. It's like I'm trying to listen into that space and it's silence. I try to look into that space and it's white. It feels like it honestly hasn't been coded yet. It hasn't been given any instruction yet, because a lot of the voice that we use is like a past to present voice for a desired future, rather than, it's like we're not casting our stones far enough. Like we're skipping rocks, but they keep landing in the same well of potential. None of it goes beyond, because so much of it is about where we've already been. And again, someone or something, not to say that I am the one I am one of many, probably, whose focus is there. But not only is my focus there, my dedication is like here. So I'm not like focusing on everything that lies beyond healing while refusing to do the healing, therefore creating this inherent disconnect because I'm not doing what I need to do to make sure I get to the space that I'm projecting out into, or that I'm like fishing out into. So and that's one reason why I'm so intentional, I guess, about my work, and why, even though like I've done enough to get what it is that I wanted, I still continue, and it never ends. Yeah. Hey, how are you doing, Amanda? I'm just talking about where my intention has shifted, I guess. Um, and I think, and again, like in the past, not the whole year, but in the upper majority of the past year, I've been experiencing how setting an intention further out and doing what I need to do here to anchor it. I still don't feel like getting it. It's the chariot card in the vice versa tarot. How the path is paved beneath his feet or their feet, its feet, the chariot's feet, as it moves forward. I'm already at an hour and 32 minutes. This video, I could have ended it at like half an hour. I feel so bad. Oh, yeah, it's fine. um, and I think that's what, again, like I just started my journey 2 years ago. So I don't know what it was like before then. But in starting where I started and in observing the world and a lot of people in the space of like when things were falling apart, it's like it seems like we can be really good at like trying to manifest something further out, but we're not as good at like doing that Knight of Pentacles, like paving the road as we go along. And so it just continues to be this thing so far outside of us because we're not necessarily doing what we need to do to create the changes and ground the changes to get ourselves there. And so like as I am focusing more on what lies for us beyond healing, because honestly a lot of people say that like we're never done healing, and I think there is a truth in that. But I also don't think that it is our journey to constantly and consistently be healing from things of the past and never experiencing any real growth and expansion into the future. And there is growth and expansion into the future as we are healing the past. But again, it's like it's this like we're stretching the rubber band. It's like we're dragging ourselves into the future or into the present moment to even have space for the future. But it's like, I'd rather close this distance than create this distance. And it's the same. Quantumly, there is no difference. When you go from point A to point B, every time you get closer to B, you're further from A. But it's where we hold our attention. And it's not only where we hold our attention, again, it's where we put our effort. I also put work into doing the stuff that, I'm doing. I'm not just reaching out and not doing anything to get there. I don't know. Anyway, I'm sure somebody out there is probably already in that space. But that's why it's silence. That's why it's so individual. That's why it's so unique. Collectively. So, yeah. And I can be like, there's so much stuff I want to do. I'm like, I don't know. Everything. Um, but yeah, that light womb, it's just like that's the sort of level of potential that we're building into. And again, quantumly, these things are the same. As we're doing one, we're inherently doing the other. If something is being received, something is being given. But it's like, which side are we sort of focused on? And again, that's why the Eight of Cups, I guess, came to me. Because it's like a lot of times we look at the Eight of Cups and it's like we're moving away from this, we're moving away from that. But what are we going towards? Like, that's what I'm more interested in at this point. Like, what are we heading towards? Yes, we're moving away, but like, you're walking towards this. And then it almost in some ways has the capability to completely invert the energy of that card. In some contexts, more so than others, it's easier to observe. Um, yeah, when you pull out that Rumi Oracle, I was like, oh snap. Who is Rumi? I need to educate myself. It's just a fan. Yeah, we talked about fear, and because there was a card, it was a well crafted illusion a contaminant blowing in the wind, searching for an open eye, and how it's so easy for us to buy so completely into things that we already believe or things that sort of play off of and prey on our fears. And from a certain perspective, it's like once we grow beyond being so fear dominated, then we can see how like poorly crafted a lot of those illusions really were. Oh, that's something I talked about on the podcast last week, I think. So for me, like when it was time for me to come out in high school, I was like, oh my gosh, like what if my friends hate me and like I lose all of my friends? But in my friend group, there were LGBTQIA plus people who were out. And it's like, so it's like it made no real sense for me to think that something that they're already accepting other people for, they're gonna just all of a sudden reject me for. But that's how easy it is for energy to attach to what it is that we fear or what it is that we already believe. And we're already going to be in a space where we more actively reject everything else anyway. But in that, it can keep this ever-present truth that is constantly trying to like unfold in front of us from happening. And it's like, yeah, like that wasn't like, why did I even think that? That isn't a sound argument. But in fear brain, it's extremely valid. And that's also something I guess that we have to learn to accept in others and where they are and where their fears are. And that's something that you've talked about with the butterfly. Just because we don't have the perception of the butterfly being that terrifying creature doesn't mean that that isn't a valid or legitimate fear or concern or worry for someone else. And if we invalidate that, it only causes not great feelings to be built up. And it also, like, I'm the type of person where if I'm in a group of people and if I have a concern and that concern is brought up and it's like dismissed, then I'm like, okay, well, that's somebody that I'm not going to talk to. Like, you can't even handle that. I'm not going to be open and vulnerable with you. Like, no, thank you. Yeah, same. And Eve said that she agrees. So it's been the upper majority of my, and like you said again, I think it was the honoring the inner child video. Like once you get a taste of what life can be outside of fear, and once you get a taste of that calm and that happiness and that like uninhibited exploration of what the world is, like I don't want to go back to fear. Like I'm not going back. Like I don't care what challenge I face. I don't care how high the tower is when it falls, how loudly it rumbles when it comes to the ground, or how violently it shakes while I'm trying to get outside of it. I'm not going back. No way. I've experienced too much for it to even be like a desire at this point. So I am healed and made whole by the power of love. We are writing our own scripts. All that limit us are our own beliefs. Exactly. Ooh, I felt that. I breathed that in. I feel it like fill up the tank a little bit. Um, but yeah. So, and I think honestly, like again, it's a space that I don't know. You set that old way of thinking on fire and let it burn to the ground. Ain't that what Adele said? I set fire to the rain. Watched it pour as I touched your face. I'm gonna listen to Set Fire to the Rain. Whew, yeah, breathing that in feels good. Okay. Sorry, what was I talking about? So again, it's not that that space is unknown, but it's unknown to me. Um, but that's why it's like stop and listen and also just receive because the part of you that knows and the part of you that knows doesn't need to be limited by the part of you that doesn't know, and it doesn't need to be restricted by the part of you that wants to know. Now, your curiosity can fuel your growing expansion into these currently unknown spaces without limiting you from experiencing them from the perspective of fear. And I think, again, Amanda, like that's something that you've said. It's like how, and I feel like there are some ways where maybe I didn't even know. Yeah, I think there have been some moments and times when I've been able to recognize it where it's like, I feel like this feeling that I would typically associate with like anxiety or like a fear, but it like it doesn't feel afraid. It's an excitement that is like sort of in the same space, but instead of approaching this unknown with like fear, it's approaching it with something else, but it's still shaking me the same. Like, um, yeah. So I don't know. It is a lot of, and but again, I guess that's that like that's the great quantum conundrum that as we're doing one thing, like, can we look at it this way? Sure, but we could also look at it this way. And if we look at it this way comes with its own suite of sort of language encoded around it. And it comes with, although it may be the exact same journey, the scenery is going to look completely different than if we come this way. But it's not just about the vision, it's also action because in earth things need to be grounded in a way. There's this constant and continuous just like mental chatter that like we receive thoughts and then like we maybe even release thoughts for somebody else to pick up on the thought and then to evolve it even more, and then there's some receiver of all of these collective thoughts. It's like, oh, I think this is, or someone who's able to tap into the space of collective thought and to pull on things that maybe many people are going through at that time and able to address them in their platforms and spaces, right? Or they're able to invent something that solves all of these problems and they're able to tap into a market that has a very real need that isn't necessarily being communicated yet. And so like all of that is, it's always here and it's always buzzing around, but without something anchoring it and then building upon it, without that physical womb here to give birth to it in a way that we can experience it, it'll just continue to be these roaming thoughts, these roaming feelings, these roaming things that we want to experience, but we're not doing what we need to do to position ourselves to experience. That's why I say that, like, I hope you're acting in alignment to make all that you wish to experience your reality because the potential is always there. But a lot of times we don't do what we need to do to make it happen. But we're doing more of what we need to do to make it happen because, all right, Amanda, it's fine. I mean, I'm about to end this anyway. Nervous and excitement are a very similar frequency. Now you choose to perceive it as excitement. Yeah. And that's why like, I love watching you. I'm just like, yes, yes. Um, but it's about actually putting it into play, actually putting it into position, actually making it something that then time can build upon. Because time can grow it and expand it. Again, like time will see the seed ripen, we'll see the bud mature, and we'll see it flower every time it's the season for, more to bloom. But without it being written into that space, without the seed being present, then it doesn't matter how much time passes. And maybe the space is different than the seed because, like, you can put a seed into the ground, but if the space isn't conducive for the growth of that seed, then it doesn't matter how much time passes, the seed will never grow. It'll never even break the seed to begin to develop roots to see whether or not it can actually exist in that space or not. So, space is also important for the time for the seed. And some of the conditions we control, some of them we do. Internal conditions are almost always the most important because then the world will sort of shift and change and turn around you to match the internal conditions in which it'll be able to grow. Now, it may take some time for the external conditions to meet the internal conditions because internally, typically we have the capability to make things happen a lot quicker. But, not to put any limitations on the divine operating in the external, because you can like all of a sudden just win the lottery, meet somebody who knows somebody who will give you that opportunity, experience it, immediate, unexpected, boom. And your external conditions can change just as drastically and just as quickly. So, but we have less control over the external than we do the internal. So maybe that's where the point lies. I don't know. But with that, it's been an hour and 47 minutes. I hope y'all have a good whatever whenever you see this. I hope you're acting in alignment to make all that you wish to experience your reality. I hope that when opportunity knocks, you invite it in and maybe you make a cup of tea for it. You ask it what it would like to feel comfortable in your home. And yeah, it was good to see you, Mimi, Amanda, and Eve. Thank you all so much for being here. I don't know what these spaces are, but it's brand new potential. It's brand new facets of divine energy that are ready to come down and ready to help us create space, help us clear space, and help us release so that we can be untethered and sort of just naturally bubble up to the surface in those spaces. Because naturally, I guess it's our tendency to rise, but it's different weights and attachments that keep us sort of anchored to the ground. So Scorpio South Node is next. So we definitely want to work through as many of our philosophies and beliefs that anchor us to these heavy thoughts and traumatic things before all of the focus is put on like, that. So we can work I don't know. Take it as it resonates always. But it's like we can work ahead and work on what we're working on at the same time, because it's all within the context of like Capricorn, Sagittarius, Scorpio before we move into Libra, Virgo, Leo. And who knows what that section will be like. Starting with Libra. Oof. Anyway, all right. I'll catch y'all later. Bye. I might. No, I feel like I want to do something else. Like, I feel like I want to talk more, but it's fine. Bye.